picture of my granddaughter. I'll be back.
Thank you, John, for inviting us. We appreciate it so much, and we're just really thankful to be here today. And so, as John said, this is not my story. I'm going to tell you about my grandfather, who was Friedrich Wilhelm Miller, and he wrote a journal during a 3-year period in Homestead from 1896 until 1899. And I gave a summary of this journal last year, and so I'll try not to be redundant, but John did want me to tell some of the stories. So that's my goal today, is just to tell some of the interesting, historically significant stories, funny stories, just human interest stories here. So his name was Friedrich Wilhelm, but he went by his middle name, which a lot of people in Amana did, which is part of the reason that the family genealogy is so confusing, because it seems like half of the people went by their middle names, and that just confuses us researchers. So he went by William or Will or F.W., and he was known to, in my family, affectionately as Oba, which I guess was a derivation of Opa. Probably one of the grandchildren couldn't say Opa, and so he was Oba. So anyway, the journal was written while he was working as an apothecary / physician's assistant and driver for Dr. William Marshall in Homestead. It gives a very clear picture of the medical services offered in Homestead at that point in time. The journal is very detailed, and it gives us a very clear picture of things in Homestead, especially in the medical field, in that period of time. It talks about the medical services that Dr. Marshall offered, which were incredible. Day-to-day operations of the office. They made house calls. Lots of house calls, and they also, not just here in Amana, but they made house calls to all the farms in the area, because apparently the farmers around here didn't have any medical services, and so they would go to the farmers if there was a crisis and treat them. And the journal also talks about F.W.'s hobbies and his after-hours activities, usually with Dr. Marshall. He and Dr. Marshall apparently were very close friends. And the two of them were engaged in all kinds of hobbies and activities with many other people in the community. I think in the journal I counted about 40 other people who were mentioned in the journal as having interactions with them, either patients or just buddies that they hung out with, people they interacted with. So you get the picture of a very close-knit community and people who really enjoyed each other. And now everybody said a lot of things about Homestead today, and I don't know anything about that because I never lived there. But the picture that you get from this journal was that everybody was very close, and also close with people in the other communities. He mentioned lots of people from East and Amana and Middle and all that. So some of the noteworthy themes in this journal, I think, are the commitment of both Dr. Marshall and F.W. to providing the very best medical care for all the people in the Gemeinde, plus the farmers and anybody else who needed medical care. They also sort of exemplified a work-life balance. They worked really, really hard. As you can see, sometimes they worked all night. You know, they'd get up early in the morning, they worked till midnight. They were really, really dedicated. But they also had a lot of hobbies and a lot of other activities that they pursued. They were just always busy. And they really did seem to have a balance of working with a lot of hobbies and other life experiences. I think the third thing that really stands out to me is the camaraderie that this journal shows. These guys just enjoyed each other so much, and F.W. and Dr. Marshall worked together, but they also appeared to be very close friends, and I think they had a really good working relationship, from what I can tell. I'm going to give you a little bit of background first about F.W. He was born in 1876 in West to Christina Kramer and Johann Georg Müller. Then the family moved to Amana in 1886. 1893, when he was 15, he left the Gemeinde, following his brothers to Cedar Rapids. I think, like a lot of other young people in Amana, he was just searching for opportunities and looking for some freedom and, trying to figure out what he was going to do in life. And so in Cedar Rapids, he was hired as the caretaker of a church, and he also was the driver of the priest. And this was Grace Episcopal Church, which I think is still a thriving church in Cedar Rapids. But in 1894, he returned to the Gemeinde. His father died suddenly, and his mother, who had 8 children, still had kids living at home, and so she begged him to come home. Apparently, he was the child that she depended on the most, and so he immediately came home when she begged him to, and I think this shows his big devotion to family, too, because I think he was enjoying Cedar Rapids, but his family came first. So he came back. So then for 2 years, 1894 to 1896, he worked on the farms of the woolen mill and did different things in the community. But then in November 1896, they assigned him to work as the apothecary physician's assistant for Dr. Marshall in Homestead. And that's when he wrote the journal. During that period of time, September 1896 to 1899, the elders decided that he was going to go to pharmacy school. So they sent him to his first term at pharmacy school at State University of Iowa in Iowa City. And then after the first term of 5 or 6 months, he came back and worked at Homestead again until September of 1899, when he went back to University of Iowa, or State University of Iowa, for his last term of pharmacy school. You could become a pharmacist by going 2 6-month terms back then. Now here's somebody with an 8th grade education, and he goes to 2 terms of pharmacy school, and then he's a pharmacist. So things have changed a bit. So I'm going to tell you a few notable stories from the journal. The first category is the medical events. Starts out in January, and it's 14 degrees out, okay? Now think about this. They didn't have cars yet. They were taking a horse and buggy everywhere they went. So they went to Amana, and it's 14 degrees out, so they took the buggy and probably were freezing to death. And they operated on Mrs. Herrmann's abscess of the liver by making an incision and introducing our, I guess, iodine gauze drainer, whatever that is. And so they did an operation in Amana. Now, where was that operation? Was it in her house? Was it at the doctor's office? I don't really know, but they were doing operations on kitchen tables in people's houses. So they did the operation. They made a trip to somebody else, somebody named John Brush at Delano's place, whose brother has pneumonia. I don't know where that is, but it sounds like it's out in the country somewhere. The day before that, they were in the east because Jakob Wagner had a fever. They thought he had pneumonia, but it was really gall fever. Don't know what gall fever is either, but, and then they stopped at another patient's last night on their way home. So they were all over the place in 14-degree weather, lots of snow, driving around in this buggy. And he says, we came home at 8 p.m. and with our noses nearly froze. So I can imagine. And he says this a lot. He uses the word corker. He says it was a corker of a trip. I guess that means it was stressful, interesting, unusual. I don't know. But then in February, he says the thermometer was 15 below zero when they got up in the morning. And on this day, there were 3 doctors, Dr. Marshall, Dr. Christian Herrmann, who happened to be my great-grandfather, and Dr. Vincent Reed, and they took T. Bryce's eye out this morning. So they're doing eye surgery again, must have been in a home because they had to go to South Amana to do it. They went in the, FW went in the buggy, Dr. Merschel took the train to South Amana, but they must have been in the home and they're operating and taking an eye out, and it took 3 doctors to do it. So, unbelievable how they could do that. So, they got through with that, and then the next one here, they made a trip to a patient who lived 10 to 12 miles from here. I assume a farmer somewhere north of here. And Dr. Merschel assisted Dr. Burbank. I don't know who Dr. Burbank is, but again, working with other doctors, they did an operation on Mrs. Novak. So I think this was a farmhouse, and here they are in a home doing an operation. The interesting thing about this one to me is he said, I was giving ether for the first time. Now this guy is 20 years old, he's got an 8th grade education, no medical training, and Dr. Merschel had been training him, but how does he know how to give ether? I don't understand that. I don't know how that worked, but apparently it went okay. And they got there in the morning and they did the surgery, and it apparently went okay, but then by afternoon they were hungry and they didn't have any food, so they stopped at a farmhouse and bought lunch of bread and butter, and then that was better. But this is funny. They had the bread and butter with some wine we had fortunately taken with us. Now, how did they know to take wine for surgery, and you know, how did that all work? I guess they planned ahead. And so as one in the afternoon, they had bread and butter and wine, and he said it made an A1 dinner for us. But the roads were terribly muddy, and the trip was a tease when then they finally got home. But you can imagine, well, I can't imagine driving in a buggy through the snow and the mud and the ice, and when it's 15 below zero. I mean, how does that work? But
so, and there's a Novak farm. It's interesting because there's a Novak farm on the Greencastle Road.
Yeah.
That's literally probably 10 miles from Homestead.
Oh, well, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
And the Novak still lives there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
So I wonder if that Burbank or somebody was like from Oxford or Iowa City area or something.
What town is that in then?
Well, it's like I say, it's on the Greencastle Road, so the nearest town would be like Oxford, North Liberty area.
Okay, well.
Is that this our side of the river right now, or the Homestead side of the river, do you know?
It's the Homestead side of the river.
I bet it's in Oxford.
Well, it could be. I mean, I don't know the towns around here, but yeah, it must be. Very interesting. Well, anyway, so apparently they made it through that day. Now this next one I think is funny. Dr. Merschel and Dr. Hermann, so 2 doctors, operated on Jakob Seltzer's dog this afternoon in the B room. So it took 2 medical doctors to operate on this dog, and so they were versatile. I mean, you know, they didn't care who their patients were. They would help anybody. And then 3 days later, he says, Seltzer's dog is better. He eats again, and his bowels have moved. Yeah. They cured him. Whatever it was, they took care of it. So I thought that was funny. Now this next one was weird. He starts out by saying this is a corker of a day. So I guess it was a day from, you know, it was not a great day. Another trip to W.A. Welch, whoever that is, but that's not an Amana name, so I'm assuming it's a farm. I don't know. A matrimony case. What does that mean? Very trying afternoon, and I wouldn't want to go through it again for anything. Doctor feels the same way. So what does that mean? Were they giving marriage counseling? Were they giving psychological help? Was there some sort of disturbance there? Why were they called? What, you know, and he doesn't detail that, which I wish he had, but your guess is as good as mine. But I thought, well, that's very interesting that they're doing matrimony cases. The next one is more medical. Dr. Merschel cut a lump out of B. Jung's cranium tonight. So again, here they're operating on somebody's head. You know, was it in their doctor's office? I don't know. It might have been, but it sounds dicey. He says Bernhardt was touched by the operation, so much so that supper and punch and etc. came up on him. So I guess he threw up after the surgery. But then he still had blood in his eye. I've never heard that expression before, but after the surgery, and he wanted a tooth pulled. So then they had pulled his tooth, but it was really, really hard, and Dr. Merschel said he never pulled a tooth with that many roots before. So I guess that was a difficult thing. But again, you know, these guys were just willing to help anybody with anything, anywhere, apparently. The next one is sad railroad accident. Apparently there were periodic accidents on the trains around here because he mentioned several of them in the journal. But this one, Hans George Grauert, which I don't know that was a member, maybe it was a day laborer or maybe it was just somebody that lived around here, but he was struck by an engine near Oxford. He fell asleep on the railroad tracks. Now that doesn't sound good. And it says the cowcatcher throwed him off. So I guess the train came by and he was asleep on the tracks. And so then Dr. Merschel went to go find the guy to give him medical help. And they went to Oxford, but he wasn't there yet. And then he says 12 to 18 men from Oxford carried him home, which was 2.5 hours, or 2.5 miles, on a cot. It was a slow job. Finally, Dr. Merschel and another doctor caught up with him, examined him. His ribs were broken, his right arm and leg paralyzed, but the hardest blow he got was on the left hip, which probably saved him from instant death. So, you know, this was a very drastic case, apparently, but apparently he lived. And again, they got home at 11 p.m., so they were out working, you know, till 11 p.m., and then probably got up the next morning and saw patients again. Okay, the next one is interesting. This one, there were 4 doctors, Dr. Merschel, Dr. Brown, Dr. Eddy, and Dr. Augustine. I don't know who those other 3 were, must have been local doctors.
I actually know Dr. Augustine.
Oh.
He was from Medora.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, it says it was 5 miles from Medora.
And his daughter was Mildred Worth Benson, who created Nancy Drew.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. I know that.
Wait,
Yeah.
what was the daughter's name?
Mildred.
Mildred Worth Benson, so she was the Nancy Drew author.
Oh my
created
gosh.
Nancy Drew. Wrote the first Nancy Drew books.
And so this was her father?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow, okay. Well, anyway, it must have been a big surgery because these 4 doctors were there, 5 miles from Ledora. The crazy thing is, it says Dr. Merschel started from here at 4 a.m., okay, to do a surgery. And it sounds like Dr. Merschel drove himself. I don't know why he was driving himself, but anyway. So, and he didn't get home till 4:30. So he did 50 miles in the buggy, did an operation with all these people, and didn't get home till 4:30 in the afternoon. So, I mean, their commitment and dedication was unbelievable to me. Now, the last one's kind of funny. Dr. Merschel did a bit of horse doctoring this evening. E.E. Owens' mare had trouble with water, and the doctor drew it. I don't know what that means, but apparently he cured the horse. So, anyway, interesting stuff. Okay, the next section is community and national events that were mentioned in here. The first one is interesting and sad, and fire and murder in Walford. The Novak store in Walford burned, and they thought 1 or 2 people died in the fire, but now they think that only 1 was burned and the other person left parts unknown. So they suspected foul play. So I have to imagine that was pretty unusual for Walford at the time to have something like that going on. Then 7 months later, Frank Novak, the Walford murderer, has been caught in Alaska. How did he get to Alaska? I mean, did people go to Alaska back then?
That's a gold rush.
And how did they catch him in Alaska? I mean, it seems like a disconnect there, but anyway, so people in this area were getting around. They were traveling apparently. So interesting. The next one talks about the first telephone from Homestead to South Amana. He says the phone worked for the first time that night. Okay, so FW was in the doctor's office at 10:30 p.m. Dr. Marshall was in bed, but the doctor got up and tried to use the telephone to call FW to let the dog out. But FW didn't hear the phone. I guess it didn't ring. And so then Dr. Marshall got up, let the dog out himself, made a noise, a racket. So FW went to see what happened. And Dr. Marshall said, well, didn't you get my call? I called you to let the dog out. No, I didn't. And then Dr. Marshall said, well, I talked to somebody. I guess it must have been in South Amana or something. So then FW gets on the phone and tries to call the South Amana. And sure enough, it was South Amana. The phone was working. And the guy in South Amana was Henry Wilde, who was his cousin. So then he spent the next hour and a half on the phone talking to his cousin in South Amana till midnight. But you can imagine, the first time you have phone service, it's pretty exciting. And of course, his reaction was, it's grand. So they loved the phone, apparently, when they could get it to work. Next thing, another train wreck in Amana. 4 cars jumped the track as the train was coming around a sharp curve by the mill. 2 of the cars were badly smashed. So, as I said, it seems like there were periodic crashes and whatever with the train. This next one is kind of funny. They used the telegraph to help with a medical emergency. So it was January 2nd, and he says the new year started pretty lively for us. Dr. Marshall had another call to Mrs. J.F. Newkirk last night. Now, I assume that was someone on one of the farms. That's not a name.
There's a Newkirk farm south of Homestead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's what it was. Oh, wow, you guys are great. So, anyway, he had a call to her, and he had arranged, it doesn't say what the problem was, but it was serious. He had arranged with the husband, J.F. Newkirk, to call Dr. Moon in Williamsburg to consult with another doctor. And so this gets kind of complicated, but they telegraphed the doctor via South Amana. Okay, so they telegraphed South Amana, but the operator was already in bed, had to get out of bed, and then he sent the message to Williamsburg. So the operator in Williamsburg responds that he couldn't deliver the message till 12 o'clock. He didn't have anybody there to deliver the message. Well, this is a medical emergency. You can't just not deliver a message. And so then Dr. Marshall said, well, hire somebody. We'll pay for it. Hire somebody to deliver this message. And then the guy in Williamsburg said, there's nobody here. There's nobody here. And he said, but I will deliver it for 50 cents. So he wasn't able to deliver it as part of his job, but for 50 cents, all of a sudden he arranged to deliver the message. So he delivered the message to Dr. Moon in Williamsburg, I guess that was. And sure enough, it worked. Dr. Moon went to the depot, ended up at the Newkirks, and everything worked as planned. But I keep thinking, what if they'd had cell phones? Look what they had to go through just to get this message to this doctor. Now, today we have cell phones. It would have been no big deal. Apparently in Amana, they were in touch with national and international events, Spanish-American War. he reports that Admiral Dewey had destroyed the Spanish fleet in Manila. And he says, 3 cheers for the boys, the war cry is remember the Maine. And then somewhat later, there was a report that our fleet had defeated the Spanish fleet. So they were interested in international and wider affairs besides just what was going on here. Now the last one here is interesting to read. You all have probably heard about the cyclone in 1899 in the South Amana Bluffs. It says, a genuine cyclone went over the South Amana Bluffs doing considerable damage. So Dr. Merschel and someone named Fred drove to look at the damage. It sounds like it was just awful. It took part of the roof from the Milwaukee Depot, the roof and the chimneys from an elevator, carried the pieces of the roof 3 miles away. Then it struck the hotel, taking off the roof in the South Amana Hotel. It demolished Jay Zerold's barn pretty badly and took the roof off the chicken house. Then it struck the Cuniers. He says a farmer living 2 to 3 miles from South Amana. And they took the upper story of the brick house clear off, and then it lifted the frame house in which Mr. Cunier was sleeping and dumped it someplace else. And amazingly, Mr. Cunier lived and was not injured apparently. So I think this cyclone has sort of gone down in history, in Amana history, as being really, really bad, and it sounds like it was.
And would that be known as straight line winds today, you think?
Well, that's a good question. Was it really a derecho or was it a cyclone? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just sounds awful, and it sounds very targeted.
What was the date again of that? Did it have a relative date listed?
Let's see here. 1899, but let's see here. June 1st, 1899. Cyclone went over the South Amana Bluffs. So yeah, maybe it was a derecho. I don't know.
It's recorded other places. I remember reading.
Really, you've read about it? Yeah, but it just sounds awful. So anyway, okay. I want to just touch a little bit about the hobbies and other activities of FW and his friends. Very interesting. The hobbies of him and his buddies, and I think I told you before that there are about 40 of them mentioned throughout this journal over the 3 years. And they just did everything under the sun. Fishing was their favorite thing. They were always fishing whenever they could, and they caught tons of fish, unbelievable amount of fish. And I think they gave some of them to the kitchens, for them to use, and sometimes they'd cook them themselves. But they loved fishing. They loved hunting rabbits and ducks. And FW did a lot of breeding of mastiffs. He was really obsessed with dogs. He loved dogs. He always had a dog. And he got interested in breeding mastiffs, and then he'd raise the puppies. It sounded like a lot of fun to me. He had a pet pig, a pet possum. I mean, he really, really liked animals. He also raised bees. I don't know if he was the designated person in Homestead to raise bees, but he did a lot of that and sold the honey as well as, using it in the kitchens. He helped Mrs. Merschel raise chickens, which, again, he loved animals. Then he also, during this period of time, learned to stuff dead animals and was stuffing dead raccoons, he and his buddies. That doesn't sound like fun to me, but I guess they thought it was interesting. He did a lot of picking fruit, planting trees. One of the things that he started doing at the very end of his time with Dr. Merschel was learning photography. And as he got older, the older he got, the more he got into photography and ended up doing all kinds of different types of photography. The very last thing that he did that he mentions doing while he was in Homestead, sort of extracurricular activities, he attempted to breed a horse. And I'm not quite sure, what the purpose of that was, but I'm not sure that it was successful either. But again, interested in animals and all kinds of things. Okay. Now the April Fool's joke. I love this. He and Dr. Merschel decided to play an April Fool's joke on Sam and Ed. And so they put 6 wooden ducks in the pond with strings on them. And then they sent another guy to tell these two, oh, there are ducks on the pond. Get your guns and go over there and you'll get the ducks. So these guys grabbed their guns, ran over to the pond. But unfortunately, one of the ducks had overturned, and it was obvious that the bottom was wood, that it was not a real duck. And so they didn't try to shoot at them. But they were always doing funny things and interacting with each other in that way. So when that joke fell through, then Dr. Merschel sent Peter Zuber an old traveling bag full of all kinds of truck, which I assume means garbage and just miscellaneous nonsensical things. But the big thing was a bottle that said gin on it, and he dumped the gin out and put water in it to trick him. And so then Peter Zuber got that, figured it out, and then he sent it to C. Rotzel. I think it's Carl maybe, I'm not sure, to make a joke on him. And then the reaction is, ha, ha, ha. So, and I told you that they like to fish, and so this is now what he calls the greatest fishing trip of the season. He starts out by saying that the guys, 4 of them decided to go fishing, but they forgot that it was the 13th of the month, which brings bad luck, on the 13th. And so they were starting out to go fishing. First of all, Malaga the horse broke the bridle. And then he has a comment about the horse fur. They had problems keeping horse furs here in Amana, apparently. He mentions at least 30 of them in the 3-year period. They just didn't last long. But that's a whole other topic. Anyway, they broke the bridle, then they found the horses were not harnessed right, so they had to reharness them. They drove down the street, then they were stopped by young Moss, who wanted medicine for a sick mother. So of course they had to turn around and get the medicine for the sick mother because they were dedicated to that. They did that, and they started out again, went into the woods, and they were supposed to meet Ed, the telegraph operator, in the woods. Well, he wasn't where he was supposed to be, and then turned out he was waiting for them in another part of the woods, and he's wondering where they are, and so they wasted a lot of time. Finally, they found him, and then apparently Sam drove like a madman through the woods, and then they got off the road somehow. That was a problem. And then the last thing was they tried to drive over a stump and got stuck. So there they are stuck, and everything's going wrong, and all kinds of back and forth. So then finally they decided that they maybe needed to eat lunch and not go fishing. So they went to the brickyard shed, had lunch, joking about the unlucky 13th day and the strange experiences. And so again, they had fun. I mean, it was a disaster of a day, but they had fun being together anyway. And then they decided to go home. And by then they'd been gone from home for 3 hours. Nothing accomplished. No fish, no nothing. Just had a lot of laughs. So, I think they had a good time anyway. After 1900, so in 1900 he graduated from SUI with a pharmacy degree, and then the elders sent him to Homestead to become the first pharmacist there. And that's when he started, and that's a picture of the pharmacy at Homestead. Don't know the date exactly, but, around, early 1900s. And during this period of time, he really got into his photography and got going. And he took a lot of pictures of just general life in Amana, a lot of family photos, and a lot of photos of important community events. And I thought this was interesting. I guess that's all you could do at that time. And he developed his own photos from glass negatives in a dark room that he set up in the basement of the pharmacy. So, that's one of his photos, just a car accident. I don't know when it was, but, interesting pictures. And, and then the Woolen Mill Fire, 1923. He just saw interesting things and took pictures of them. Then in 1908, he married Helena Hermann, my Oma, and apparently my mother told the story of how he courted her. She lived in Middle, he was in Homestead. He and Otto Eichacker and one of the Kippenhahn boys all had girlfriends in Middle, and so they would get on the hand car on the railroad track, these three guys, and take it part way to Middle, and then at some point they'd get off and go to Middle and walk the rest of the way. But it sounds horrendously dangerous to me, but apparently that's what these three guys did. And I guess one of them, maybe Otto Eichacker, was the station master or something, so he knew the train schedules. So as long as the train stayed on schedule, they could figure it out. If a train had come off schedule, they would have been in trouble, I think. But anyway, and they all ended up marrying their girlfriends that they were courting in Middle. And so right before the wedding, I came upon this letter the other day. I had never seen it before, but it's a letter to his friend, Bertha Shambaugh. Apparently they were very close, and he called her mother. The letter said, "Dear Mother," and she called him son. So anyway, he says, next Thursday, May 7th is the day when the last of your boys will join hands with the best and dearest girl in the world. So I thought that was a sweet way to put it. And then at the bunch of other stuff in the letter that I don't have up there, but then he sort of gives a little dig at, I don't know, the elders or somebody. He says, "I would like to invite you all to the wedding, but our ruler forbids it." So I assume the ruler was the elder in charge of the wedding. RC knows about all that. So he was not totally disrespectful, but sounds like he was frustrated about that. He would have liked to have had people at his wedding, apparently. So then the children were born, and the first child died right after birth. And then my Uncle Henry was born in 1911, and Louise, my mom, in 1913. And there's a picture of that he took of his two kids in 1916. So that's a cute picture in the Schulwald. Then in 1915, they sent him to Amana to be the pharmacist there. And while he was in Amana, and I think this started in Homestead too, he was known for his production of hog powder, which was some tonic for pigs to cure whatever ailed the pigs, I guess. Parasites maybe. I'm not sure. Do what?
Pepsi.
Oh.
Yeah, you have Pepsi Bismol?
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, that's what that was?
That was made right across where we at.
Yeah,
Right across the street.
Oh, the Pepsi Tower. Yes, because that building over there was called the Pepsi Tower, so that's probably where they mixed it up. But
It was my shop
yeah.
for 18 years.
Yeah. So anyway, apparently all the farmers in the area came and bought that, from what I hear. And there's a picture of him. Bertha Shambaugh took the picture, but I'm not sure when or which. I think it was Homestead, but it could have been Amana.
That's in Amana.
Sure. Is that in Amana? Okay.
I know the place. What?
Do you know the date?
I had the honor of knowing the man.
Yeah.
I mean, I was young.
Yeah.
His sister was my babysitter. So she took me to that. And when I was in that space, don't you touch anything.
I'm sure he was particular about the bottles, and in fact, we have lots of those bottles at our house now, and my kids have them too.
I can remember his voice.
Can you really? Oh my gosh. Oh, that's crazy. Which sister?
Anna, well, Kate.
Oh, Aunt Katie.
Kate was the oldest
Yeah.
and lived the longest.
And Aunt Katie was your babysitter.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Well, poor Aunt Katie. My goodness. But she lived the longest, so maybe it was good for her. You helped
I mean, he was just a nice guy that running the family.
Well, I mean, he sounds like it. I mean, I was 2 when he died, so I feel like I remember him, but I probably don't. It's probably just from pictures, you know. But anyway, that's great that you remember him so well. You'll have to give me some more details later. Okay, almost done here. In 1923, became a church elder, and he later was a member of the Committee of 49 in preparation for the Great Change in 32. And then in 1952, he died while he was working in the pharmacy. He had a heart attack and he was gone. So, you know, that he never retired, but he probably wouldn't have wanted to retire. You know, he liked to stay busy, obviously. So, anyway. So, then I found this eulogy that was apparently read at his funeral, written by Dr. Henry Marshall, who was the son of Dr. William Marshall that he had worked for. And Henry Marshall was also a lifelong friend of his, a dear, dear friend. And so this is just an excerpt from that eulogy. It says, "It's given unto us to respect and to love him for many noble qualities, for the song in his heart, for his devotion to duty, for his loyalty to the church, for his unselfish interest in everything that is Amana." I think that's evident in this journal. He just was interested in everything. "For the charm of his personality, for his helping hand towards his fellow man, and towards his many friends, far and near, and especially do we admire him for his sincere and ardent love for his family." And I think that all was obvious in the 3-year journal that I read. So, you know, for me, these words just kind of said it all. And it's a testimony to the lifelong friendship with Wilhelm Marshall and Henry Marshall and, you know, the whole family. And, you know, I thought it was just very touching. So, anyway, those are some stories. And R.C. just told me that he has a copy of the journal, so if any of y'all want to borrow it for him.
I think there's probably one in the museum.
Yeah.
That's the museum.
Yeah, there's one in the museum.
She gave me a copy,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to share this. I've already got one person who wants to see it.
Oh, good.
It takes probably a day to get through it, but many of the stories that you picked out
are in there. And then there are many
are
other
in
stories
here.
too.
So
Yeah.
I'm willing to share this with you people and spend some time.
That's nice,
reading
that's
about
nice.
it.
So if you do happen to read the journal, I didn't mention that every day he gives a very detailed weather report. And
Yes.
so when I first typed this up for my kids and grandkids, I wrote an introduction and I said, just sort of ignore the weather because you can get bogged down in the weather reports every day. So, you know, if you're sick of hearing about the weather, skip over the weather part. That's not the meat of the journal, you know.
Yes. As I spoke with you, where did he get the weather report?
Yeah.
So we
The
figured
telegraph
out
operator made the
it was
telegraph.
the telegraph operator at the depot who was only a couple of houses away. So
Yeah.
he must have had personal communications with the depot operator as to what the weather must
I
be,
don't know.
and he writes it down.
Yeah.
And so he was born a Mueller.
Yeah, well, so, his,
So did he change his name when he went to Cedar Rapids?
the name
or-
was Mueller, and his father, on his father's gravestone, it still says Mueller, but on his it says Miller, and we always knew him as Miller, and so I don't know when exactly he changed the name. I am guessing that when he went to Cedar Rapids, maybe he did. There's no notation
westernized
anywhere
it a little
about.
bit.
Well, they should
Yeah.
change the U to an I, easier to pronounce,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, I think he was trying to be Americanized. I mean, he
Yeah.
left and went to Cedar Rapids,
Yeah,
so,
so
you
he
know,
probably
he's
did it
trying to
when he was-
assimilate, I think.
And my
So-
grandmother was a Miller, his sister.
Right, well, so did she consider herself Miller or
Yeah,
Mueller?
I always, well, I don't know, I never met her, she died before I was born.
Oh, your but how about Aunt Katie? She considered herself Miller.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
it's
think.
how you pronounce it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and spell it, yeah.
But they,
so,
yeah, they changed the spelling and
That's
everything.
what, yeah, so I'm assuming that's what it was, because I've always heard it as Miller for him. So, anyway, yeah.
Thank you so much, that was so interesting.
Oh.
I grew up in that part of town, by the doctor,
Oh,
in the
okay.
alley, beside the house that was the pharmacy.
Okay,
And
right.
that was, you know, and for a long time, when you were, it wasn't soaking in my head on the date. For a long time, I thought we were talking about Henry Marshall, who was our doctor right next door.
Oh, okay, right, yeah,
you know,
it's
how did
confusing.
it click? No, because, this William Marshall, and I was looking at dates, oh yeah, my Oma was born in, 1899. She was one of his babies. And
Oh,
I was one of
okay.
Henry Marshall's
Right.
babies, but it just, I had to get in the right dinner.
I know, it's very confusing, there are a lot of Dr. Marshalls. In fact, Connie was saying there's 5 generations of Dr. Marshalls, so, yeah. But, and FW, the age was right in between William and Henry. And so, you know, William was his friend and mentor, and Henry was a kid growing up when FW was, the apothecary assistant, and so he knew him since he was a little boy. So he kind of helped take care of those Marshall kids too, you know. So he was right in between the 2 doctors in age, but close friends with all of them. So yeah, Alan.
Yeah, well, I just remember as a little kid that I went to Dr. Noy over here and to the old pharmacy. and
Yeah.
In the center, there was a round table, as I recall, and there was a jar on there, and I think it was a pickled pig.
Yeah.
Sitting in the middle of
I
that
know.
table.
I know. I kind of remember that too. Yeah, I know.
He was a tax deductor.
Yeah, he did all that.
I think
But
that's-
why? I wish I knew why. I mean, I couldn't work in a place that had a pickled pig sitting there.
It was
But
me.
he was interested. He was a scientist, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
For those who don't know me, I'm Larry Schuster, and Gail and I hang around together.
Right,
way
right, yes.
a lot.
Yes.
It struck me today when I've been listening to you all, or can I say y'all,
Yeah.
how common people are. I'm 100% Swede. All 4 of my grandparents came over to the United States. And I've lived in all of, many of the United States. I've traveled the world in 15 places. And I pay attention to how, one of the reasons I want to do it, I want to see how people live. How they live. And become so aware of how common people are, even though there's different languages, different whole lots of other stuff. But when it really comes down to it, we're vastly different, and at the same time, we're all the same.
Isn't that true? Yeah.
And how we respond.
Yeah.
And I was really struck with that, listening to it. I've been here 4 or 5 times. How long have we been hanging around together? A long time. I've heard many of these stories, but it just struck me today of all days that how common we all are.
Yeah.
And the craziness, the love, the care, how you go out to help other people.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, today, just look at how we're all the same.
Yeah.
While at the same time being very, very much different.
Yeah, well, these guys were all into helping people, obviously,
Yeah,
because they sacrificed to give medical service of the highest quality that they could to people. So anyway, but yeah, so RC has a copy of this if you want to borrow it. He also has a copy of FW's father, Johann Gaylor's journal, which is a whole different ball game, taking place in West and Amana, and a whole different thing, but it's interesting as well. So he'll loan that out to anybody that wants to read it also. So, okay, thank you for having me.